And welcome back to another episode. Today, I've got Jack Bosch on the show, and you guys are going to want to listen to this from two suitcases, nearly an empty bank account, and a big dream to a multi-million-dollar land business. Jack Bosch, he is a true American success story. Originally from Germany, Jack moved to the U.S. to attend college where he met his wife, Michelle. Now, today, they've flipped over 5,000 properties. From their experience, they've created the forever cash flow model, something I'm interested in learning more about today. And they've helped over 1,000 people become millionaires through their free and paid educational programs. And they want to create many more. We're going to talk about that today. Jack, welcome to the show. It's great to connect with you.
Thank you very much, Brandon. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, man. No, likewise. So very excited to get into your business model and some of your programs, how you help people. You're in the land business. We're in the land business too. So I'm sure we're gonna have a lot to talk about. But for those that don't know you, can you give us a brief background? Like, what's your story, especially your immigration story, coming to the United States, and how did you get into doing what you're doing today?
Sure, absolutely. So I am, as you mentioned, originally from Germany, so I sound a little bit like Arnold, but obviously he's Austrian, Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? But he's only probably a 5-hour drive from my hometown, is his hometown, so it's all pretty close to each other. And I came over to this guy. I was born and raised in Germany. Went to school there, then went to college there, and at the end of my college time, I had 1 year left in college to get a master's, and I had the opportunity to come to the U.S. as an exchange program and to basically take some classes in U.S., get an American degree, and also get credit for what I was still doing in Germany. So I basically figured, hey, I'm not wasting any time. I'm not adding yet another year to college. I'm spending my last year in the U.S., get credit for it in Germany, finish my German degree, get an American degree, improve my English. That's going to be fantastic for me to go back to Germany and get a really good job and get on that corporate career that I was planning to have. And well, 3 weeks into it, I meet this young lady crosses my path from also an immigrant, or like basically also an international student from Honduras, Central America. Her name is Michelle, and we kind of fell in love with each other. And fast forward, we're now married 23 years and have a 16-year-old daughter. And so fast forward to that, because I met her, because I had really initially not immediate plans of staying in the U.S. I loved it here. I continue to love it here. Now I'm an American citizen and so on. But initially it was only meant for 1 year. And I had my job lined up in Germany. I had my apartment in Germany. I had the friends in Germany. I had everything lined up over there. But as love strikes, it changes your trajectory in life. So we decided to both give it a try and stay in the U.S. And so we got jobs, and I got a job. I applied all over the place. I only found one job that was willing to actually sponsor my work visa, because you don't automatically can stay in a country just because you study here. You got a 1 year work permit, but afterwards it has to be extended. So I ended up working at a software company, the only job that I was able to get. I'm not a software guy. I didn't really enjoy it. I mean, I learned as much as possible. I was a business analyst. I went to business school here, so I went to become a business analyst, but it wasn't really a matter of the job. I did whatever it freaking takes to be able to stay here, because Michelle was from Honduras. She didn't feel like moving to Germany. I didn't feel like moving. I did not feel like moving to Honduras. So we basically said, we both like it here. Let's try to stay here. Well, after a couple of years of that, and working like in a software industry, consulting industry, you end up working 80, 90 hours a week. Like you end up working through the weekend. We started at 9 a.m. in the morning, worked until 10, 11 o'clock at night, just literally just drove back to the hotel, had something at a hotel bar, fell into bed, did it again, Monday to Friday, flew home. And I did that for 5.5 years, because that's how long it took to get the green card. But halfway through, about 2.5 years through it, Michelle and I looked at each other and was like, this is not what we want to do for the rest of our lives. We're like, we don't see each other. When we see each other, we are that tired. After she graduated, she worked in finance, or like in accounting finance at a small company and a mid-sized company that also sponsored her visa. And we were like that tired. It wasn't a career path we wanted to do. It wasn't the experiences we wanted to have. We didn't enjoy life because we didn't spend it together. We just basically worked in some offices all day long. And it was just, we like, no matter, even if we get the green card, this is not what we wanted to do. So we realized we needed to do something different. We needed to look beyond what we were doing. We needed to see what else is out there. And I talked to other people who also graduated. They were complaining just as much around the world in different places. So we're like, you know what? I think we need to start our own thing, but we didn't know what. So we looked around, and ultimately we stumbled over real estate, tried to make it work, and through all kinds of different coincidences and failures, really, we failed in all kinds of different real estate. We stumbled into kind of niche in real estate that allowed us to do deals from anywhere in the world while traveling 100%, and with starting with a very low budget, as it was in our case. So and that was land flipping, as we call it, which is really land wholesaling and also land seller financing. And we started with very, very small deals. Like the very first deal we got under contract was a lot in a small town that the seller was going through a divorce. He didn't want it anymore. It reminded him of his ex-spouse. He wanted to have like a clean slate. Must have been an ugly divorce, very traumatic for him. And he just wanted to let go of everything that had to do with that marriage and just have a clean new start in another state. So he gave us this acre that was only worth 10 grand for $400. And we turned around and we sold it to the neighbor the next day for $4,000. And we're like, okay, well, that's 10x our money. That's more than I make a month in my job. So then 2 weeks later, we got another deal and we made $9,500 on that deal, and never even see the property, never even touch it, and never even change anything on it. And we started, okay, let's go. And then in the first year we did 63 deals. So the second year and in that first year that we figured this out, actually halfway through, the green card arrived. And with the green card came obviously now the permanent residency in the United States. And in that moment, we were able to quit our jobs and haven't looked back ever since. We grew this into an 8-figure land flipping business. From there, we took the money we make and continue to take the money we make with land flipping, move it into other asset classes that spit out cash forever. And the rest is history.
Wow, I'm very interested in getting into what your strategy is with the land. Like we do, there's so many different strategies. We do a lot of like land entitlement, a lot of rezone. We'll develop and sell finished pads to builders. We'll build ourselves. I know people who are, known for the like it's like these lots that are out in I think like Arizona, and that's
Mhm.
it's like these huge swaths of land, and there's like a bunch of pieces of them. I know people who will like seller finance those. I know people who will just flip lots, infill to, to builders, subdivide, sell lots. Give us a little bit more context around your strategy.
All right. So there's really no ceiling to the strategies that we pursue. Typically, when we started and when we now teach is also, we have for the last 15 years, we've been sharing this with others and teaching this with others, and created over 1,000 millionaires already in this space. But when we typically share this, we start people with a very, very, very simple business model. And that simple business model is just simply that we basically figured out how to find the people that own land and no longer want the land, and are literally just like that first guy that was like going to divorce and so on. They're just willing to let these properties go. Typically, these are heirs, or these are people going through the divorce, or these are people who are getting a little older and have no more use for the land, and their kids don't want the land, or these are people who had plans for the land, and the life and circumstances, or the circumstances have changed. For example, the grandkids are born, and they wanted to initially actually go build a house there and then go retire there. Perhaps it's a lakefront community, perhaps it's a nice hillside community or in the mountains, or perhaps it's just in Florida in a nice community close to an ocean or something like that, or as I said, to lakes, or close to a city, or in the city, and so on. These are beautiful neighborhoods, and they just changed their plans for their life because perhaps the grandkids are born and now they don't want to be far away from the grandkids anymore. Perhaps the spouse passed away and they don't want to do this anymore. Or, as I said, perhaps both owners passed away, and the heirs sitting 2,000 miles away, and they're like, no, I don't want to ever move there. And they're just willing to give these properties up for pennies on the dollar. So we've identified how to find and perfected how to find these properties. And these are typically properties in the little bit lower price range, from let's say about 20 grand to a couple $100,000, $300,000. But again, there's no ceiling to it. You can also do, one of our students right now is doing a deal where he has a development piece under contract for $2.3 million, and it's worth like 3.5, and he already has it under contract with as a wholesale deal for $2.7 million. And after everything is said and done, he's going to make $350,000 on that deal. And he's in this case though, but the key is to start out with, when somebody comes to us and is like, I want to learn this, we typically don't touch the land and we don't do anything to the land. We simply figure out we teach them how to figure out how to find those pieces of land at anywhere between 10 and about 50 cents on the dollar, and then simply pass it on immediately, mark it up, pass it on, create a great listing, and or find a great realtor and sell the property as a wholesale deal and make some money in the process. So typical example, a $50,000 property, have put it under contract for 10 grand, wholesale it for 30 grand, don't see it, don't touch it, don't do anything to it. Or a $120,000 infill lot, get it on a contract for 80, sell it to the builder for 100, don't touch it, don't do anything, don't do anything with it. So it's basically classic real estate wholesaling, just done with land and lots. So that's strategy number one. Strategy number two is that we actually sell a lot of the land, and you mentioned it already, we're seller financing. So seller financing, basically take that same lot, $50,000, you put it under contract for 10 grand, but now instead of wholesaling it for 30, you're selling it for, you mark it up to full market value, which typically means it would actually sit on the market for a while, because as you know, land listed at full market value doesn't necessarily move very quickly.
Right.
But if you can sell it with a 10%, with only a 20% down payment, let's say you say like, hey, it's available for 50 grand, but you can have it with only 10K down. Now it moves quickly because now the deal is in the low down and the low monthly payments and the affordability of the terms. So you do that, and if you noticed, if I have it on a contract for 10 and I'm getting a down payment of 10, then I don't need any money to do those deals, because I can simply do a double closing and I can use the buyer's money to pay the seller. And perhaps you carve out from the buyer a little bit of the closing costs, so that doesn't even cost you any closing costs. So in essence, you can do that deal cash neutral, that you don't even take any money out of your own pocket. Those are typically the two entry-level strategies that we teach and that we also applied when we started out to do these deals. And as a result of that, by doing lots of seller financing deals, we have grown the seller financing up to all the way up to $71,000 a month. So that's a nice seller financing. I think when you make like $800,000-900,000 a year in just cash flow, of which every single payment or most payments that you receive are actually pure profit. So these are the first two. Now, with that said, usually what happens is after somebody learns that and masters them, uses that money to get out of debt, uses the money to get an ROI, uses the money to put some money on the sideline, uses that money to, I don't know, buy a new car and retire their spouse and things like that, whatever people do with the money, they reach what we call a level of more mastery. They become it becomes like a cookie cutter model. And once it becomes a cookie cutter model, it's time to add a level of complexity to it. And at that point, we some people go into exactly what you say. They go into entitlements. Or they go into rezoning, or they go into things like that. But usually the first step that people do is they just go into lot splitting. And so lot splitting is basically often works, for example, in states like Texas or states like Arizona. There's usually, if you look at the zoning rules, particularly if you're on the outside of town, because we focus on three kinds of properties. Property number one is infill lots. Property number two is lots on the outskirts of town, basically in the path of growth. And property number three is larger acreage in more recreational areas. So I just talked to one of our coaches today, and he's doing a deal in Texas where he's gotten a 300-acre parcel that is positioned in a certain way that it's really easy to subdivide, and every lot still has road access. So it's actually about 330 acres or so. So what he's doing is there's an exemption in the zoning rules in that area of Texas. That means that as long as you keep the parcels at least 10 acres in size, you can actually subdivide them just by getting a new survey, by making sure they have easements in place, and by by basically recording new legal descriptions and filing an application fee of like $500, you can have the entire thing back done. So if you take it, if you in this case, the 330 acres costs something like $160,000. After he then goes and gets the survey done, and he splits it and essentially into 30 11 acre parcels.
Mhm.
So each of the 11 acre parcels, 1 acre is like the easement for the road, and 10 acres is like usable land. But by doing that, he now has basically has the ability to sell them individually. And what he's doing is selling them individually for some of them for something like $25,000 to $30,000 in cash. So if you make the math of that, because they're smaller in the rural areas, the smaller the land, and you know, with subdividing, the smaller lots, if you take a 10-acre property and split it into 10 1-acre properties, each 1-acre property is not worth 1/10 of the original. It's probably worth 20% of the original. So you're adding tremendous value by subdividing. So by doing that, he's taking these 10-acre parcels that basically he's getting them for $500 an acre. So he's getting them for about $6,000 or $5,500 per lot, but these lots are now worth $20,000. So he's turning around and selling some for like $15,000 to $20,000 cash. So if he takes 10 and sells them for $15,000 to $20,000 in cash, he has all the money back. And then he takes the other 20 and sells them all for about $20,000 or $25,000, let's say 20 grand, with a $2,000 down payment and monthly payments of $500 for the next 7 years. And now he's created, in essence, a $10,000 cash flow on free and clear land that for the next 7 or so years. And that is obviously a very beautiful scenario, because in that case, after just selling 10 of them, you got no money in the deal, and then the rest is just pure profit. And if you think about that, that's $10,000 a year. That's $120,000 a year over these, $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year over 7 years. That is something like $840,000, $850,000 in pure profits just by taking it a step further. Because the alternative to that deal would have been that he just takes that 330 acres, gets it cheaper, and marks it up a little bit. And in that case, with a traditional wholesale, he would have probably made $30,000. But by doing it this way, he's going to make $850,000 on the same kind of deal. And that's obviously that. But from there on, and after that is done, you can take it further. You can go get assemble land, put bigger pieces together, get into the cities, get rezone things, entitlement things. That's all on the horizon on there. But the typical bread and butter is those strategies that I just shared.
So you guys are mainly focused on infill lots and land that's in the path on the outskirts, but in the path of development. And typically it's don't do anything to it. Your classic wholesale model. Let's get it, flip it to another investor or somebody that there's some meat on the bone for a quick sell, or, builder, whoever it is, if it's infill. And then you're also implementing these seller finance strategies to suck out a little bit more of the equity and create some cash flow. What I love about that is you don't get hit with the huge tax burden. If you don't have any other depreciation strategies, if you're just doing this and you're getting hit with the capital gains, then obviously taking all that up front, you're going to get a bigger hit. But this is actually creating what most people don't understand that they need to be doing, which is creating cash flow.
Exactly
Not
right.
taxable liability. You're going in and you're creating a cash flow machine. I'm guessing that this ties into the forever cash model that I wanted to get into you with this. Can we speak to this a little bit, or did
Sure,
we
absolutely.
already
Yeah,
is the cat already out of the bag?
no, it's not. But yeah, and it's not just a little. The seller financing can actually make a massive impact. If I take that same example of the $50,000 property, you have it on a contract for 10. If you wholesale it for 30, you make 20 grand. If you sell it with seller financing, because in the land space, banks don't typically lend much on land. I mean, they do, but typically, I mean, what's the loan to value that you get on your piece of land if you go to a lender? 50%?
Yeah, they're not going to lend more than 50% on
they
it.
don't lend more than 50%. And what interest rates do they charge right now?
Let's see, 10%, 9.5, 10%.
Yeah, 10%. So if we go to somebody, so in other words, if somebody would want to buy that lot with seller finance or with bank financing, they would have to come up with $25,000 and pay a 10% interest rate. Well, we allow people to buy this property for $10,000, which coincidentally is what we owe the seller. So that's basically how much is the risk for us? The risk for us is zero, but we are still doing an 80% loan to value loan here. And because it's 80%, we can charge more than 10%. We can charge 12, 13, 14, 15% on that. And the sellers, the buyers will never complain because there's no other option out there. And it's actually not that far from the bank loan for 10%. So when you add all of that together, the fact that you sell it for more and the fact that you now charge interest, if you do that deal, like I did the math on that $50,000 deal with a $10,000 down payment and a 15% interest rate and a $500 a month payment, the payments go on for 15 years and you make $92,000 in profit on that deal. So that's the difference, making 20 on a wholesale or $92,000 on a seller financing deal. So seller financing not only provides it cash flow, it really 4.5 times excess your return on that investment. And that's obviously a beautiful thing in there because it really optimizes your return. But to the forever cash model or to the model, like actually there's a book behind me. It's called Forever Cash. It's actually out of print. You get a used copy on Amazon somewhere. Hopefully sometime this year we have the time to actually just do a version 2.0, update it a little bit, and then put it back out on print. But it's really our money philosophy. And our money philosophy that Michelle and I, we neither one of us grew up rich. My dad is a middle school teacher. Michelle's mom is a elementary school teacher. My mom is a stay-at-home mom. Michelle's dad passed away when she was only 9 months old, and mom never remarried. So it's like we just grew up very, very normal. Don't have any entrepreneurs in my family, in my extended family, anywhere. The only entrepreneur is my brother, who started about the same time with me, but in Germany. But so I have no role models in the family that say like, hey, that taught me anything about money. So we had to learn this kind of little by little by just observing what the rich and the wealthy do. And what we found that the rich and the wealthy do is they do the following. They focus on maximizing their active income. So they really focus on not just a job that pays 50 grand, 70 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand, whatever it is, that they focus on doing whatever it takes to 5x, 10x, or like just really boost their active income. And then what they do is they don't spend that active income, but instead they take that active income and take as much as freakingly possible, like in some cases 50, 60%, and roll it over into different asset classes that produce then basically ongoing, more passive income. Now, is really every income always usually 100% passive? It can be if you invest in like multifamily syndications, which now we do too. If you invest in like a note where you just get monthly payments. But even there, if somebody occasionally stops making payments, you still got to get involved and so on and so forth. So, but it's at least 90% passive, right? It's not, you don't have to go to work at 8 in the morning from 8 to 5, 5 days a week in order to get a paycheck. The paycheck comes in whether you work or not, right? So that's my definition of passive income. But of course, there's always a little bit of involvement left that you want to do. You want to be in charge of your money. You want to monitor what your money does. But the point is, so what we have learned from that is that we're using land flipping, as we call it, in land wholesaling, land seller financing to build up cash and cash flow. And then we were really, really excited about all those loans that we built up, all of the seller financing that we built up. But then we realized that the seller financing, some loans, we did 3-year loans. After 3 years, they were paid off. And after 5 years and 7 years and 10 years, they were paid off. So we realized that basically every 7 to 10 years, you have to kind of rebuild that passive income. Because you can build, like, for example, like Ryan, one of our coaches that is doing the deal that I just talked about, within the next 6 months, he has built up a $10,000 a month payment stream for himself. But in 7 years from now, that payment stream has died off and he has to rebuild it. So then we realized, so we gave those payment streams, by the way, name. We called the money that you work for by going to a job or that we're doing anything that is active income, we call that one-time money. Because you work for it one time and you get paid one time, right? The kind of money that comes in for a limited period of time, whether it's a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, like those seller financing notes, we call that temporary cash. So one-time cash, temporary cash. And then the money that comes in for the rest of your life, we call that forever cash. So the goal ultimately, therefore, becomes that in your financial life to do whatever it takes to ultimately reinvest into assets that produce forever cash. So we love land flipping. I will never stop land flipping probably until I'm 100 years old because I love the chase of the deal. I love that boom when that wire hits and you made another $25,000 or $50,000, or even if it's just $5,000 sometimes. I love that feeling of accomplishment when that happens. And my 16-year-old daughter, like Michelle and our 16-year-old daughter, is now doing her first deals. Right. So she's in the game. She loves the chase of it. She's like getting Google-eyed when she knows that she got something under contract for 6,000 and somebody's willing to buy it for 17,000, and she's going to make 10 grand in the process, which as a 16-year-old might as well be $1 million, right? Because they don't even conceive what that means. But ultimately, what we're already teaching her is that, okay, when you make 10 grand, you're going to take $500 and you're going to spend it on whatever the heck you want to spend it. You got to celebrate. Then we're going to take that's $1,000, and that might be your cost of getting the deal done. So your net is $8,500. So you take the remaining $8,000 and you reinvest it into something else. And what is that something else? And ideally, it is something that spits out cash forever. So what our chosen way thing is, and that's where we actually doing in the same kind of business. Our chosen way of forever cash is multifamily. So we have started about 15 years ago, started buying single family properties when the market was in the gutters, right? We started buying, our land flipping continued to work. But then we started buying single families. Soon enough, we had a portfolio of single families in Phoenix, one in Cleveland, Ohio, one in Omaha, Nebraska. And we realized that we can manage them remotely without having to go there all the time. And that's when we started saying, like, you know what, let's level it up. And now we're syndicating multifamily properties on that. But even there, we have kind of a plan. And the plan is that we buy 3 to 5 of these 100-unit apartment complexes. We optimize them. We go sell them. Our investors make 15 to 20% per year annual returns. We make a portion of the money, but then we take that money and then we buy one apartment complex without investors. Because the ultimate goal is for us to have whatever number of doors that we set ourselves up that we can just hold on forever and not sell. Because I really don't want to sell these things. This is my forever cash plan.
Yeah.
So in essence, we're using the money from our active business. We're using money from a land flip summit, and then we use the money also from the cash flow of these seller financing deals, and we're rolling that over into, in our case, multifamily. Why multifamily? Because people need a place to live. We've seen what happened with COVID when office space went down the drain because people all of a sudden are working at home. We see what happens to retail when Amazon coming up and taking everyone's lunch. And now it's not just Amazon. Every company has figured out drop shipping. So it's like retail becomes less and less important. We figured out, we've seen what happened in Airbnb. It became really, really popular, but now there's an oversupply and occupancy rates are down. But you know what? In the United States of America, we're still a growing population, and a growing population has continued need for apartments. So we have been doing very, very well through COVID, through post-COVID, pre-COVID with these multifamily properties. And if they're selected well and financed well with the right kind of loans, then they're actually pretty darn safe investments that will guarantee a very, very good return, and even for a very, very long time.
I want to circle back because I've got a question regarding the your customers that you're seller financing these deals to. So part of your seller finance plan, let's say you're seller financing it over 7 years or 15 years, is that the seller that you're seller financing to either A, doesn't sell it, or B, doesn't have to do something with it. You mentioned that one of your first strategies was infill lots. You can move those to builders or move those to people that maybe do land banking, hang on to it for 3 or 4 years. What happens in the event that you flip a lot to you seller finance a lot to a builder, and he's going to go get a bank loan to build on it? I mean, aren't you
Yeah.
just going to get paid out kind of early
Yeah,
on
you
and
are.
not be able to create
Yeah.
seller financing for that?
That's correct. So that's actually a good thing. I get that question a lot. Is like, well, what happens if they build on it? Well, if they build on it, then they're gonna go to a bank, and in that case, they're gonna go get a construction loan. And when they get a construction loan, then at that point, the banks are a little bit more willing to actually roll the land into it in some shape or form. But what the banks will never do is subordinate their bank loan to your seller financing loan on the land. So they will absolutely reach out to you if you're the seller and you providing the seller financing, they will absolutely reach out to you and they will basically say, hey, how much is this person, how much does the buyer still owe you? And you basically issue them a payoff letter, which, by the way, when you say you don't really do that. We don't manage our own loans. We have a loan servicing company that we hire. There's some nationwide loan servicing company. We basically have relationships with a few, well, not relationships. We use one for our own loans, and then we have 3 or 4 that basically our student bases are use and really say they have really good experiences with them. And so when that happens, they basically get a phone call or get a letter from the lender that says, hey, from the bank that wants to finance that construction deal, and basically like, how much do they owe you? And you're like, well, they owe you $47,000. It's like, okay. And then 3 weeks later, when the loan closes, they pay you off and you get a $47,000 check. In my book, that's still a good day. Obviously, I didn't get the tens of thousands of dollars of interest over the years. But how much did I have in the deal in the first place in this moment? Probably nothing anymore. So now I just get a windfall of a $47,000 check that comes my way. And I'm certainly not going to be mad at that.
So who are the customers that are, living these seller financed opportunities out to expiration? I mean, do y'all have like
Yeah.
a target
Yeah.
avatar that you're
Absolutely.
going, in like the wholesale game, right? It's all about cash buyers, people
Yeah.
who've got access to hard money, or they own a portfolio of rentals and they got cash and they just, want to buy it immediately. And so like that's your goal as a wholesaler if you're in the single family flipping world. Because we used to do that, is you want to build a ginormous cash buyers list. Here, it sounds like maybe there's a little bit more nuance. Maybe you're trying to build a
There
list
is.
of like specific type
Yeah.
of customers for your seller finance deals. Is that true?
Yes. So specifically, first of all, we are in a B2C world. So we are usually selling to an end consumer. We're
Okay.
selling to one out of 5 buyers. So the first kind of buyer is that's the only B2B side. We're in the infill lot side of things. We're in a B2B world. Basically, we're selling to builders. So you simply go get a list of the local builders, go to the local builders association, call a few of them, give them the numbers of the lots and the neighborhood and so on. They probably know the area anyway already, and they'll either say yes or no, and they'll buy it. And typically the builders are actually cash buyers because they have financing sources. They have private lenders and things like that. They'll just basically take the deal over. Typically, that's not a seller financing deal. The second kind of buyer is it's a financial buyer. The financial buyer is particularly interested also, again, in infill lots or in the immediate path of growth where there's already development kind of starting to happen, because the financial buyer is basically an affluent buyer that they're sick and tired of the stock market and its ups and downs. And they just basically understand land a little bit, understand that cities are growing, understands that if a lot is 5 miles outside of the city, outside of the last development, and that city is growing rapidly, that it's probably only going to be another 10 years before that lot is that, let's say, 5-acre parcel 5 miles out of town is engulfed with development.
Yeah.
So in that moment, that 5 acres today might be worth $200,000. You got it under contract for 80 and you sell it to that financial buyer for 120. So you're making a $20,000 profit. They usually pay cash because they have the money. They pay cash. So now they paid 120 for that lot, but they're going to sit on that lot for the next 10 years. And once everything around it is developed, those 5 acres are worth $1 million or more.
Okay.
And then that they taken their money and they 7x'd it or 8x'd it over the 10 years. And they're very, very happy. You're very, very happy. The seller's very, very happy. So the first 2 people here are not necessarily the seller financing buyers. The next 3 are in a higher number. The first one is the next one is the future retiree, as we call them. So in the United States, there's a sad statistic that says that 70% of all the people over the age of 50 don't have more than a few $1,000s to their name. They don't have many savings. They're one a big medical bill, one big broken car down, or a broken down car, or one any kind of other emergency away from being broke. So what happens is, and that's pretty sad, but the reality of it is actually it's also the opportunity to provide a really, really good service to society with this business. And that is that the average American Social Security check right now is about $1,600. Just under 1,600. You can Google it. I think 1570 something, I think, if I remember it right. The average rent in a big American city is $1,500. So the people are now in their 50s, they realize that they won't be able to retire in dignity in an environment that if they don't own their own house, or if it's paid off, and most people don't, that they can't afford to hold on to that house. They can't afford to even pay rent and still live, which is a crisis that's going to come, by the way. Is this in our future? 10 years from now, this is going to be a major crisis. It is already in Europe. Like Germany, where I'm from, the subject of older age poverty is a huge subject because everyone relied on the government, and the government can continue to crank up Social Security higher and higher. So as a result, there's lots of people living on $1,000 a month and have to survive with that. It's insanity. It's sad. And the US is on the same path. But here's the thing. The smart ones, what they do is they actually realize, well, the smart ones realize they need to make extra money, and they search out programs like ours. But the next smart ones basically start saying, well, if I can afford to live in the city, then how about I go outside of the city and perhaps get myself a nice lot with utilities to it that I can pay off over the next 10 years. And then I put a mobile home on there, and then I have perhaps a $300 monthly payment, and I still can live on $1,200 a month. And we provide that service because we are going out 10, 20, 30 miles, or sometimes even 50 miles outside of the city, in a little bit beyond the path of growth, but still outside, not too far away from larger cities. And we get those lots under contract that other people have owned for 30 years. They don't want it anymore. So they give us their $30,000 lots for $5K, and we go mark it up for $25,000 or $30,000. Have one of these future retirees give us a $6,000 down payment, pay us $300 a month or $500 a month for the next 10 years, pay that thing off. And in 10 years from now, when they're ready to retire, they have a free and clear piece of land. Now they get a used mobile home, put it on there, and have a dignified retirement. Those are buyers that absolutely need the seller financing. That was number 3. The next one is actually also in that kind of vicinity, like half an hour outside of town, is actually another fairly affluent kind of buyer group, and those are what we call the virtual workers. I used to call them COVID buyers because they literally skyrocket. The demand from that group skyrocket when COVID happened. And that's basically in the United States right now, we still have 40% of all Americans work from home. Now it's going backwards a little bit. It used to be 80% on COVID, right? Then it used to be 70, 60, 50. Now it's around 40. And I don't see it going down much more than that. But 40% of all American workers is 50 million people in the United States. So you got 50 million people that work from home. I mean, you work from home. I work from home. Right? If you look around, a lot of the people I know work from home now. And they have good incomes, but a lot of them don't work. Not everyone wants to live in a high-rise condo or in a cookie-cutter neighborhood with HOA and things like that. Many would love to have a 2 to 5 acre property, 20 minutes, 30 minutes outside of town, that if they need to go to a business meeting into town, it's only half an hour away. But if they don't, they now have space. They can have a goat, they can have a horse, they can have some chickens. They can think this entire movement also to live off the land again and have a garden. It's moving up. There's a Facebook group obviously in Facebook, that has 1 million people that are all talking about homesteading, getting back to the land, living off the land, living a little bit more back normal again, right? And at the same time now, we have some development that happened that is like with Starlink, by Elon Musk, right? Starlink, you now can have a full broadband internet access in places that you didn't even have proper cell phone reception just 5 years ago. Yeah. So it's becoming actually feasible to do this right now. Just 5 years ago, just the year before COVID, it was barely possible to even make that happen, even if you would work from home. because if you want to be half an hour outside of town, you're in a little bit more rural area. Cell phone reception is probably not good. You don't have high-speed internet, but now you do. And it costs you $70 a month with Starlink to have full streaming quality broadband internet. So now it actually makes sense. So a lot of people that are in this 30 to 50 years old, they're like millennial kind of thing. They're like, hey, I want to live a simpler life. I'm a computer programmer at Apple in Silicon Valley, but I want to buy myself a 5 acres, half an hour outside of Nashville, and I just want to have my build a house there, and I just want to have my peace there. And if I need to go to Nashville, if I want to go to Nashville, I go. But if I don't, I stay out here, right? They have money. They do prefer self-financing just because they're used to financing and they want to put all the eggs in one basket. So, and that's one of them. And then the last one is the recreational buyer. And the recreational buyer is the one that wants to have a mini ranch, that wants to have 20 acres, 30 acres, 40 acres, or 10 acres minimum, to just go out and enjoy the weekend. They're the ones with the dirt bikes, with the ATVs, with the RVs, with the quads, with the razors, with the kayaks, with the hikers, bikers, hunters. Again, a lot of them have good money. A lot of them, they just want to have the piece of land to build their own mini ranch and things like that for the weekend. But even those now that they're starting to blend over the last few years, because with all that Starlink and solar panels and things like that, even those places now become feasible to actually spend not just a weekend there, but spend 3 weeks at a time there, because you can actually now be completely off the grid and have just drill a well and then have solar and have Starlink, and you're ready to go. And that is becoming a thing. There's the doomsday preppers out there. There's the homesteaders. There's the back to the land people. There's the recreational people. There's millions of these buyers, and they have money, and they're going to spend the money when they find the right lot. And so again, but they also like to have seller financing. So the three kind of properties we focus on: infill lots, path of growth, in the recreational land. They have millions of buyers lined up of them. Half of them often do seller financing, half of them don't. So as a result, we sell about 50% of our lots with seller financing and 50% we don't.
I see. So you've got it broken up in which ones you're going to do seller finance to based on those
Yeah.
buyers and which ones you're actually going to be able to get the seller financing. And you know, because it's based on who your buyer is. If you're flipping it to a builder, you know, hey, look, this is going to be a
Right.
sell, versus if it's somebody that you've, I guess, understood or gathered that they're looking for something kind of long term, that it's going to be more of a seller finance deal.
Yeah.
This is
And you
all
can also
great
manipulate it,
information.
by the way. You can derive it because if the lot is worth 50, and you can say, hey, if you're going to give it 30, if you want to do seller financing, you can buy it for 50 with seller financing. Or if you want to pay cash, I give you a $15,000 discount. Guess what? More people will pay cash for that land. But if you say you have it for 50 with seller financing, if you want to pay cash, it's 49. Most people are going to do the seller financing because it's the more attractive offer, right? So you can play with those kind of things. You can also, by the way, also, if you don't like the seller financing, there's people that are like, I don't want to have the cash flow. I want to have just the cash. I would just pile up the cash, then go buy myself my own rental apartment or something like that. Great. Apartment building. You can actually, when you create the seller financing, what you're essentially creating is a note, right? Because if that deal, let's take the same deal, $50,000 property, $10,000 down, they still owe you $40,000. And that is written on paper that says, I, buyer, owe you, seller, $40,000, and I will pay that in monthly payments of $500 at 15% interest for 15 years, and so on. And if I don't pay, here's how your foreclosure and so on works. So you basically, this is a note, and you can sell those notes. So if you have a $40,000 note, there's a very active note buying market that exists, and we have pulled them. Our students are selling tons of notes to different note platforms, and we have multiple groups that have note buyers that actually they're almost like courting our our students. They're like, hey, you got notes, They want to buy those, and it's very reasonable to sell a $40,000 note for $35,000 within a very short time after you even created it. So in essence, if you don't want the cash flow, you can always sell the note and get cashed out that way.
Love it. Jack, how do people learn more about you, learn more about your, educational programs, and if they're interested in this specific service, learn more about land flipping?
Sure, absolutely. So they can simply go to a website called Land Profit Fun, like land profit, and then havingfun.com, like not having fun, but like not with a D at the end, but land profit fun, just like the fun is Fun, like having fun.com.
Yeah.
They can find out more about there. And sometimes we have like multi-day kind of like webinar series where we walk people through it and so on. But I think on the Land Profit Fund, you'll get probably, I think, invited to download a 30-day blueprint that is a very, very detailed document that shows you exactly how to make this business happen in a matter of 30 days.
Love it. Land Profit Fun. We'll make sure that that is posted below, along with any other links in the show notes. Jack, it's been a pleasure having you on today. Thanks for sharing your strategies and all the information that you have around this incredible opportunity here. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.